So last time when we were talking, we kind of glossed over some important parts about you growing up,
I
and
mean, kind of sliding across the ice.
yeah, we were trying to do the 50,000 foot view of Don Miller's childhood, but you really kind of need to go deep into the weeds.
Yeah. Deep in the brush, Bubba.
down into the ditch.
Yes.
So, you wrote down some of the things that we forgot to touch on last time. And you've told me some stories that were really poignant to me and kind of stuck with me. They're not my stories, but when you told them to me, they always stayed with me. So I thought we could go over, how we kind of talked about your dad being somewhat of
a drunk?
a vagabond, like
Yes.
he's bouncing around doing different things.
Free spirit's what I'd like to say.
Okay, free spirit. Can you kind of tell us when? So when he came back to Tennessee, on kind of unannounced, or he
Right.
sent a letter or whatever.
Sure.
Your grandfather, Homer,
Yep.
was he kind of serving as a surrogate father role, or he hadn't yet?
No, not yet. No.
Okay.
No. We were still living with Granddaddy, and Mom had found this place when she was picking blackberries over there. So, Granddad and his boys, we went over and kind of fixed it up. Was getting it ready for it to be livable. The roof was leaking, windows had knocked out, so on and so forth. So anyway, Granddad helped us fix it up. So Mom had moved from Granddad's over to that house that she'd found, and naturally took us kids with her. So then Dad arrived, and he was there about 3 weeks, and he got him a job with Nashville Bridge Company, which was painting riverboat barges. And he had him a good drunk friend that ran with him all the time. His name was Mac McDowell. And Mac and Dad, when they'd get together, they'd see which one could empty the bottle the quickest. And of course, Dad could always do that. I think he drank from the bottom up rather than from the top down. But anyway, he was residing at the house. He'd stay in Nashville during the week, and then he'd come home on weekends. And I can remember, I was just a little fella, probably maybe 7. He come in with a brand new 49 Ford red pickup truck. And naturally he had Mac with him. And about 9 o'clock that night, there was 3 of us boys. There was Galen, which was the youngest brother. There was Ronnie, which is older brother. And then there was me. And we had one bed, so we all slept in the same bed. And we heard this commotion going on outside of a gun going off. So I raised up and looked out the window, and George and Mac were shooting the headlights out of that Ford.
The new truck?
In the new truck.
Uh-oh.
And they were actually taking pot shots to the little hood ornament that was on front of the hood.
And they were blowing out the lights on your dad's new truck?
Yes.
Oh, no.
So anyway, Mom just told us, she said, just stay in the bed. Maybe this will go away in a few minutes. Which it didn't. It kept on until they mutilated the truck. Shot every window light out, all the mirrors off of it, all the tires.
This is your dad doing this?
This is my dad and his buddy. Now, what they were thinking, I don't even want to go there.
Just
who knows?
Drunk.
Yeah, just drunk. So, about 3 o'clock in the morning, Mac passes out. Dad comes inside the house, and he's hungry now. So he wants Mom to get up and fix him something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "No, George, I'm not. I'm not going to fix you anything to eat. You need to get in here and get in the bed." Well, that started another ruckus. So he picks up the kitchen table, flips it upside down, pulls the refrigerator over in the middle of the floor. So everything in the refrigerator was all over that dirt floor. And we had no pot-bellied stove in the living room. So he kicked at it, knocked it over. Thank God it was in the summertime, so there wasn't no fire. But he kicked it over, basically mutilated the house. Then he goes out on the front porch and goes to bed, goes to sleep, leaning against the wall. So the next morning we get up, we're going to school.
Oh, this was a weeknight.
This was a week. Well, it's Friday night. It was on Friday night. So the next morning we had what they call a pie supper. You know what a pie supper is? Everybody bakes a pie and takes it to the school, and it's a fundraiser. So in the afternoon, when everybody gathers, they have what they call a cakewalk.
Well, I've heard of a cakewalk.
Okay. So anyway, you're taking steps, and the cakewalk and the pie supper is the same thing.
Okay.
So, but you're trying your best to get on the spot with the little girl you like.
Oh, I see.
Because she's the one that made the pie. So if you like this little girl and you can find this spot to where that number and the pie is the same, then you get to eat the pie with her. So anyway, Mom had baked a cherry pie and I'd taken it up to the school. Got back, Dad and Mac were still on the front porch, drunk, as usual. And Dad looked at me and he said, "You want to go fishing, son?" I said, "No, Dad, I don't think so. Not the kind of shape you're in." "Oh, let's go fishing." I said, "Well, we'll have to walk because you mutilated the truck." "Well, we just walk down there. There's a little place down on about maybe a mile from the house called Buster's Lake. And Buster was Buster Reese. And he was very wealthy. Drove a Cadillac with a big cigar. And so he allowed us to fish in that lake. It's about a 3-acre lake. So finally, we head out to the lake after so much controversy. We go to the lake. Well, Dad and Mac are leaning up against a big old oak tree up there. And they got their fishing poles set. And I see this bobber on the water ducking beneath the surface. So I holler, "Dad, Dad, your pole, your pole." Well, this big old bass had grabbed a hold of that hook and took it offshore, and Dad was up against a tree asleep. So I dived in the water.
You had a hard day of drinking.
Oh yeah. So I dived in the water and got the fish and the pole back. So that afternoon on the way back home, he said, "You can tell your mom I caught this fish and we're going to have it for supper." It's a pretty good sized fish, probably about 3 pounds. So we got back to the house and dressed the fish. Mom said, "It's a good thing because we don't have anything to eat. You turned the refrigerator over last night. Everything that we got was in it."
Oh.
So I had to throw it all away. So glad you all caught some fish. So we had fish that night for supper. But that's just Dad. That was him.
And then eventually he kind of lost custody, as it were, quote unquote. I mean,
well,
how did that happen?
That came a few years later. By now, Mom had another child. Her name was Shirley Ann. And Shirley Ann was probably 6 months old. And Dad had now left Nashville Bridge Company, and he'd went to work somewhere up in Illinois at painting. Now, exactly what he's painting, I don't know. But anyway, he was gone for about a month and a half. He wasn't there when the baby was born. So he comes in, wee hours in the morning, and I happened to be in the kitchen with Mom, and we heard the car coming down the road, and there wasn't that many cars on the road. And she said, "That's probably your dad." About that time, there's a cedar tree that is right on the side of the highway when you turn off the highway onto the lane to the house. Well, he piled that car up in the middle of that cedar tree.
He crashed right into it?
She said, "Yep, that's your dad." So she said, "One of you run up there and see if he's okay."
Oh my God!
I'm sure he is, because he's probably so drunk he don't even realize he's hit the tree. So sure enough, on the way up there, he's still gunning the engine, trying to push that tree out of his way, I guess, whatever. And I said, "Dad, you okay?" "Well, hell yeah, I'm okay. Do I look okay?" "Well, yeah, but you don't sound okay." So anyway, we got him out of the car, took him home. He had a few little cuts and scratches on his face, so Mom doctored him. And then we all went to bed. So it was about probably 3 o'clock, 3:30. We just woke up with another big ruckus going on in their bedroom. So Mom came out of the bedroom, and Shirley Ann, the baby, was sleeping in the living room in a little crib. And us boys had the room just off of that. So I heard my sister scream, my older sister, Barbara. She screamed, "You boys get up!" So we immediately jumped up. There wasn't no sleep at that point. So we immediately jumped up and went in the living room. Well, Dad had Shirley Ann up by their ankle with a butcher knife, and he said he was going to cut her throat.
A little 6-month-old baby.
6 months.
6 weeks old,
Yeah,
or how?
6 months.
6
About
months.
6 months. So anyway,
Holding it by one leg.
one leg. Yep. And of course the baby was
Screaming.
petrified. Right. And Mom was hollering, "Don't do it, George. Put the baby down. Put the baby down." Well, he said, No. You've been out messing around, and this is not my child. So I'm just going to cut her throat.
Holy shit. How old were you?
I was 10. About 10. So my sister, older sister, was standing in front of Mama, between Mama and Daddy. And I made the motion to her that catch the baby, because I'm fixing to lay him out. So I drug a chair out of the kitchen. And
He was drunk at this point,
he was
right?
drunk. He was drunk.
So he didn't see you moving around
No.
behind the
Well,
scenes.
if he did, he didn't pay any attention to it. So anyway, I pulled the chair up out of the kitchen and set it right there. And of course, dirt floor, so it don't make much sound. So I grabbed the fireplace poker and hit him right across the back of the head, just as hard as I could. And he dropped the baby, and my sister caught it. She tore off to Granddaddy's, right out the front door, and headed for Granddaddy's, which was about 1.5 miles away. So
He went down, right?
he went down, right. So everybody else cleared out. Everybody went outside and was hiding to get away from it.
You just hit him the one time?
I just hit him the one time. But the adrenaline and, that kind of thing and he was already drunk.
So did it knock him out or just knock him down?
Just knocked him down, basically. Of course, he was drunk enough. He wasn't but about an inch away from being knocked out anyway. So anyway, when I hit him, he wasn't expecting it.
Oh, yeah.
So he dropped the baby, and my sister caught it. So when she got to Granddaddy's, she's telling Granddaddy what was going on at the house. So you don't mess with Homer. Homer is pretty aggressive
He's
guy.
a tough feller.
Tough fella. So he always kept a German Luger in his bib overalls. So he just told my grandmother, he said, "Well, I'll take care of this mess once and for all."
Now, Homer was your mom's dad, right?
That's right.
So,
Was
yeah.
Mom's dad. So the babe was safe. Barbara was safe. The rest of the family was fairly safe because they was hid out in the briars and the
Everybody was hiding?
The
Including your
yeah.
mom? They all went into
Yeah.
the bush?
Yep, they went into the bush. So me and my brother, we had made some paths through some heavily sawbriar patches. So them sawbriars, they had thorns on them about 1 inch.
Mm.
So Dad was in his underwear when all this was taking place. So I jumped over him and headed out the door. Well, he was getting himself together, getting up. So I made a line for that sawbriar patch because we had tunnels.
It was pitch black outside,
Oh
right?
yeah. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30. So I headed out to that sawbriar patch. Well, he headed out behind me because he just seen me go in there. But he had no earthly idea what he was up against because those sawbriars are crossed and everything. So it was just ripping him to shreds. His underwear was hanging on pieces of the thorns.
He kept coming?
No, as far as he could until he got several thorns in his feet. And then, oh my God, that's it. But he kept hollering at me, "I'll kill you if I ever catch you." Well, I knew dang well he wasn't going to catch me because he couldn't get through them sawbriars. And the tunnel was low and he was tall, so he was trying to come in full height when I was crawling through there. Of course, I was 10, so I could almost hunker down and just run through there, right? So I was way ahead of him. But I was hid out in that sawbriar patch when I saw car lights coming down the driveway. And Granddad had an old Pontiac. And on the hood was that Indian.
Mm-hmm.
And when you turn the lights on, it would light up. So I knew who it was because that Indian was lit up on the front of that Pontiac.
I didn't know that the hood ornament lit up too.
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So that's Granddaddy. Wow. We'll be okay now. So anyway, Grandma, we had an old wall telephone, and Clara, and we always called her Aunt Clara. She wasn't any kin to us at all, but she was the operator. So you do 2 rings to the operator, and she'll plug you into whoever you're trying to talk to. So Grandma would call the sheriff's department and said, "You need to get down there as quick as you can because Homer is on his way, and we don't want to know the end results unless somebody's there." So anyway, when Dad saw that it was Homer, he hid. So everybody was hiding. So Homer gets out of the car and he hollers, "Mildred," which is my mother, and no answer. So he did it again, no answer. "You boys?" Well, I said, "Yeah, over here." And he said, "Come on out of there. If you got your brothers with you, bring them. Because this is going to end tonight. One way or the other." Of course, Granddad didn't know the sheriff's department was on its way because he had left and Grandma had called after he had gone. So anyway, I saw the lights from the patrol car. One light. Now they got several, but then it had the one light. And they were coming and turning in the driveway, coming down to the house. And Granddad said, I heard the sheriff, and when he pulled up, he said, "What's going on, Homer?" He said, "Well, we got a guy here we need to take care of, one way or the other. You can either kill him or I will. Doesn't matter. But this is going to end tonight." Well, deputies, another car pulled up. The deputies found Dad. So they arrested him, put him in the back of the patrol car, and then they left. And Granddad was still there in the middle of the driveway. He said, "You boys can come out, and Mildred, you too, because I'm taking you to our house." And Mom came out behind the old barn that was down there. And my older brother, he was down there with her. My younger brother, I don't know where he was, but under the floor, I think. But anyway, we all got in Granddad's car and went to Homer's house. And so the next morning, we get up at Granddaddy's house. And he said, "I want all you boys on the back porch back there." He had the enclosed back porch where him and Grandma slept. And a lot of people call it a sunroom, but it was, to us, the back porch. And the fireplace was there, so he lined us all up in front of the fireplace. He said, "I'm going to tell you something. Your dad is no longer here. Nor will he ever be. So just get used to that idea. And your mom has had her chance to raise you kids, and I'm sure she's done the best she's done. She can. But at this particular point, she hadn't done good enough. So, from now on, here's the rules and regulations. There's 75 acres here for y'all to run and romp and do whatever you want to do. That 75 acres is fenced, and all the surrounding property belongs to somebody else. I don't want to catch you on somebody else's property. There's three things you boys are going to do. I've already raised my family. They're up and gone. I'm doing you a favor. So, your mother has the more say-so on how you're raised and how things are conducted around here. This is my house, my rules, my regulations.
She was still living there, though, right? She was living with Grandpa or her dad?
Yeah. So he said, from now on, if y'all need to know anything, you'll either ask me or your grandmother. Don't go to your mother. Because she no longer has a say-so. She had her
authority completely.
Right. She had her shot. And it didn't work out. So it's my shot. It's my house, my food, my groceries, my bed, and my farm. So you boys are going to take over the farm. My older brother, Ronnie, he said, Ronnie, you're going to learn to milk morning and night. Donnie, you're going to feed and water the calves and feed them their bottles and make sure the hay is in the mangers for the cattle. And you'll go get the cows for Ronnie while he's cleaning up the dairy barn, getting things ready to milk. Galen is too young, so he's going to feed the chickens and gather the eggs. And your sister, Barbara, is going to help your grandmother in the kitchen. So, that's the way it is. I've got two rules. Don't ever ask me why for anything. If I tell you no, don't say why. Because if you do, you're not going to be able to talk for a week. Don't tell me you can't do anything. Because I know damn well you can. It's because you're not trying. So don't test me on that. Because those rules don't change. Ever. As long as you're in this household. And I'll lay out everything as we go here. You're going to go in there and eat breakfast right now. You're going to get yourself dressed. Get ready for school. But first of all, we're going to the barn. So Ronnie, you'll know what to do when you get in this afternoon. And I don't want you lagging around. I want you to go straight to the barn, get the cows. Donnie, you go get the cows, bring them in. He can have everything prepared in the milk barn. And that's the way it's going to be. So, your mother has nothing else to do with it. And that's where we started with Granddaddy.
And you stayed there until you were, when did you move off to California again? When you were 16, 17?
I'd
18?
I was actually about 19.
So you were there for 9 years?
I was there until the service called me. And Uncle Sam, my older brother, left early. He went into the Navy. He had Mom to sign for him because he couldn't handle the farm anymore and couldn't handle Granddaddy. So, and he was more aggressive and rebellious than I was. So he's always putting the test on Granddaddy, and Granddaddy was always putting the test right back on him.
Whooping his ass?
Whipping his butt. And I can remember one case that right before he went to service, he had turned some cows out that hadn't been milked. And this was Ronnie. He's going to test you. He's like Daddy. He's going to test you one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked so much like Daddy, I think Granddaddy resented him to start with. So anyway, he turned this cow out, and the milk was still streaming out of the bag. And he said, hey, before you turn her out in the pasture, you need to take her in there and milk her. He said, I've already milked her. He said, you know what I hate worse than a thief? And that's a liar. Because if you do one, you'll do the other. You did not milk that cow, or she wouldn't be streaming milk right out of her bag by herself. So you didn't milk her. Don't tell me. I'm not stupid. So you get your butt back in there and you milk the cow. Well, he took the cow back, and while he was milking, Granddaddy roped him, threw a rope around him, drug him up to the stanchions there in the milk barn. And most people don't know what a belly band off of a mule harness is, but it's the part that goes in under the mule's belly, and it's about an inch thick. and he'd taken that belly band, and he had him tied up. Ripped his shirt off of him while he's there in the stanchions, and went to wailing with him with that belly band. And every time he'd pop that new belly band across that back, big leather strap across his back, you could see the hide raise from his back. So when he got through, there were several straps. So when he got through, he looked at me and he said, "Go over there to that salt box and get some salt and rub in that." And I said, "But Granddad, that's salt. You heard what I told you. Go get the salt or you're next." So I rubbed salt in it. Which, now, thinking about it, that was to keep the infection down. But, anyway, my brother wore those scars to his grave.
He never turned and beat up Grandpa?
No. No.
Too afraid to?
I'm sure. I was. Yeah, I'd have never approached the old man for any reason.
If I saw him whipping on my brother like that, I would have
No, I don't
pulled the
think
old fire poker trick on him.
well, you know, like he always said, you got to sleep sometime.
Yeah.
And so you just respected.
That's crazy, man.
You respected that part, and you done what you're supposed to do. As long as you did what you're supposed to, you didn't have any problem.
Well, he doesn't sound like the most cordial.
He's not a great father.
Congenial
image.
Gentleman. Yeah.
No.
So.
But I'm sure he was raised hard.
Oh, probably.
And probably worse than what he was treating us. But
Yeah.
at least we had, at that time, other than, we had 3 good meals a day and a nice place to sleep, right? And we had a roof overhead. Grandma'd make most of our clothes. So, you know, our shirts and stuff she'd make out of flour sacks. So, and our jeans, that kind of stuff was just...
I heard about, like people would buy a certain kind of flour because it had a design in it or something.
Martha
right?
White. And they come in 25-pound bags. And, of course, we never went to town. So the peddler would always come every Friday. And if we needed flour or sugar or a meal or something like that, then Grandma'd either trade eggs or a hen or a rooster or...
It was all barter system?
Yeah, it was barter.
They had no cash?
No, we didn't have any cash. Only a milk check will come in once a month. Well, there's 6 people to feed there, right? So that money was spent for shoes and whatever else was necessary. Shotgun shells and rifle shells and, you know, steel traps for trapping. But most of it, you know, we just traded with the peddler. And if we was lucky enough to have a penny or two, you probably don't remember, but there's a little package of 4 called Kits. And they were strawberry flavored, chocolate, and vanilla, and maybe a cherry or something of that nature. And the peddler, there's a penny. So the peddler, right before he'd leave, he'd flip 4 of them out the door, you know. And then he'd usually stop because he'd always forget about my sister. He never saw her. And then he'd stop, flip another one out the door. Of course, we'd get it and take it to sister. But his name was Dave Davis, I think. I know his first name was Dave.
What about that story you told me of the time your dad came back? He showed up to Grandpa's
Granddad's
house.
place?
Yeah, after he went off with the cops that one night, and then eventually they let him go back to that house by himself, right?
No. He never came back home after that. But he was gone for about 3 years. And when he left, little did we know, but Mama was pregnant again with my little sister.
How'd they have time
Deborah.
to even have coitus if they hated one another so much?
I don't know. But maybe it was a demanding thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when they went into their bedroom, we weren't allowed. So we didn't peek through the crack holes or anything to see what was going on in there. We didn't bother that.
Probably fast asleep from how hard you were working.
Well, but anyway, about 3 years had gone by. Now we had another little sister, right? So her name was Cookie, and Deborah, but my other little sister that Dad tried to mutilate, she was old enough to talk when Mom came in from the hospital. She was trying to say Lookie, but she said Cookie, so it stuck. So we always called her Cookie. And but anyway, Grandma always was sitting near the sink, looking up the road, because her sink faced the road coming to Granddaddy's house. And I remember her saying, "Homer, there's a cop car coming here." Because there's only one house below us, and that was Charlie Daniels, the old bootlegger. So you was either lost, or you was either coming to our place or Charlie's. There's only two places on that road that you could...
Or the peddler.
Yeah, or the peddler. So anyway, he came around and pulled up in the driveway. Granddad, happened to be on the back porch, and he said, "You stay right here. I'll take care of this." And he had his Luger here in his overall pocket. So I could see beyond Granddaddy. Naturally, I didn't, I went out the back door the same time Granddad did, so one slam was all it was going to be. So he didn't even know I was back there. So he walks down there and he said, "Yeah, what can I help you with?" And I heard Daddy say, "I'm here to see the kids." He said, "Like hell you are." He said, "Yeah, I came down to see the kids." And he said, "You think this guy here's going to protect you from seeing the kids? So you brought the sheriff with you? And he's going to help you see the kids? Not in your lifetime, George. You'll never see another breath in your body if you get out of that car. And Mr. Sheriff, I'm going to tell you something. You got 3 seconds to back that sucker out this driveway, or I'll be calling the ambulance for both of you." And I heard the sheriff say, "Yes, sir, Mr. Carr. Sorry we bothered you." And they backed out and left.
Friendly folks up in Tennessee.
Yeah, they can be. That was probably some of their better days.
Smoky Mountain hospitality right
you
there.
Bet you. If you don't like it right now, wait a few seconds.
Oh, man. Well,
But that's the last time I saw Dad until I was married several years later.
Well, didn't you say you saw him right before he passed? He came through?
He came through. He's sitting on my porch in Lebanon, Tennessee. And we lived on a main highway. My blacksmith shop was a couple of miles down the road. And I got up to go feed the horses one morning, which it was normal for somebody traveling afoot to stop in and ask if they had anything to eat or any kind of work they could do for money or whatever. So that happened quite frequently. So I looked out the door, and this old guy was sitting on the porch. And I thought, "Oh, another guy needing some money."
Mm-hmm.
So I opened the door and stepped out on the porch. And I said, "Can I help you?" He said, "Well, you might can. I'm your dad." I said, "What?" I hadn't heard from him in 20 years. He said, "I'm your dad." Well, I walked around where I could see him. Sure enough, it was Dad. So I said, "Where the hell have you been?" He said, "I've been up to your brother's in Cookville, and I guess they got tired of me, so now I'm here." I said, "Well, how'd you know where I lived?" He said, "Well, that's easy enough to find. All I had to do is ask Galen. Galen told me where he lives. I guess because he wanted me out of his house. So here I am at your house. You going to let me stay, or you going to drive me on down the road? One way or the other." I said, "No." "No, come on in. Have you had anything to eat?" He said, "Not in a day or so." I said, "Okay." So my first wife, she fixed his breakfast. We gave him a room upstairs, and of course he was the same old drunk.
He was drunk when he showed up?
Well, he wasn't drunk at that particular moment, but the only reason he wasn't because he didn't have any money. So,
How old was he?
oh, I'm going to say at that time he was probably late 60s, early 70s. So, he stayed with us 2 weeks. He left just like he came. I took him down to he was a big fisherman. He liked to fish. So I was getting ready to go to work one morning. He said, "You can drop me off at the creek. I'm going to fish today." So when I got back to pick him up, I couldn't find him anywhere on the creek. So went on home and went up to his room. Everything he had was gone, packed up. And last saw him. Then they called us from California several years later. He's the edge of death, and wanted to know what they needed to do with the body, or if any of us wanted to come see him while he's still alive, or whatever. I didn't go. None of my siblings went. So
He was on his deathbed?
at that time, then
From
the hospital called us.
Did he have cancer or something?
No, I'm sure it was probably cirrhosis of the liver.
From drinking?
Yeah. So I'm pretty careful on how much intake I do with the alcohol. I'd had my share of that. Even though I ran it, I didn't drink it.
Did y'all have any like heart-to-heart conversations while he was
Yeah.
there for those 2 weeks?
Are you kidding?
Or
No.
it was just like, I can't believe he's here, and then he was
Right.
gone
Me and my wife, we'd have a conversation at breakfast, you know.
with him?
No, with us. Because usually he was either upstairs already drunk, because I'd give him some money, and he'd always go and do the same thing. Go to beer joint, buy him a 6-pack, and he always drank Old Crow.
Was that a beer?
No, that's a whiskey.
Oh.
Potent whiskey. It's like 96 proof. 3 or 4 swallows, you know, you're back out of it. So that was him.
Old Crow.
Old Crow. Yeah, it was made out of Kentucky.
Okay. Do they still sell that?
I'm not quite sure.
I don't think I've ever
haven't
seen it.
it.
I've
I
never
haven't
seen it. Yeah.
But it had a crow on the front of the label,
Yeah.
and it in crow position with a squawk, like you could tell it was squawking because his mouth was open, right? So that was the emblem. But they must have been 24, 25 bottles in his room,
Oh my
lined
God.
up around the side of the window.
So you didn't kick him out?
No.
He just left on his
He
own
just
accord.
left on his own.
No, you think he
But-
did that at your siblings too? Or he
Yeah,
probably
I'm
just
sure he did.
just
I'm,
bounced
yeah,
off and
he
he's like,
just
they
bounced-
kicked me
Okay,
out.
Yeah, and that's what he'd use. You know, he'd use some kind of sad story
Mm.
in order to make you feel sorry for him and move right in. But that was Dad. He always did that, you know. So I was surprised. I was more surprised to see him on my porch than I was surprised to see him leave.
Sure.
Because he's one of those type of people that tell Mom a lot of times, "I'm going to get a loaf of bread," and you'll see him 4 weeks later, maybe.
So was your mom still alive at that point?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
he never checked back in with
No,
her?
no.
They kind of just
No,
had like
it's a good thing because Mama
They
thought,
just kind of separated?
oh, they gone. They divorced.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
Officially?
It was officially divorced.
Um,
And then Mom never married again. I guess she had her fill of the first one.
I guess. Well, she had what, 5 kids?
6.
Six.
That's 6 of us.
6 kids.
Yeah. 3 girls and 3 boys.
You told me a story one time that stuck with me. I thought it was significant, but maybe that's just the way it was back then. You said no one ever gave you a hug, or your mom never said, like, "I love you, son," or anything like that?
No.
Ever?
No emotions was ever shown in the family.
I mean, just anger from your grandfather.
Yes.
He had anger.
There was anger issues, but I can't ever recall Mama ever saying, "I love you, son." Never. And I never heard Granddaddy say that. I've never seen Granddaddy even smile.
Never.
Never.
Did he ever just like put his arm around you or something?
Nope.
Or?
The only time he's going to put arms around you was to hurt you,
Oh no!
one way or the other. He's going to put you in a headlock and put that fist right up your nostrils. But no, there was no affection shown.
Yeah.
And if you did, Mom would always. Once I was grown and was already out on my own, and I came back from California, I reached to hug her on Thanksgiving because we was having Thanksgiving dinner at her place. So I was going to hug her before I left, and she dropped her shoulder and moved out of the way.
Really?
Yes.
She dodged the hug.
Dodged it. So I said, okay. Well, I love you anyway, Mom. And she said, yeah, me too. That's close it got.
So Don, did that like change the way? I mean, the way you treated your wife when you got married, like, did that make you want to be more, hands-on, compassionate, expressive?
I guess I was a little strange to her in a lot of ways because I wasn't shown love, so I didn't know whether to touch somebody or not touch somebody, or. And I'll have to say my first wife was very passionate. She'd hug you and tell you, you can say you love me, Well, maybe I can, maybe I can't, So we were married for 17 years. So in that 17-year period, I learned how to show affection. Maybe it was on a card, or maybe it was a bouquet of roses or something of that nature. But I always put a little statement, I love you. And then when I got in the entertainment field, everybody loves everybody in the entertainment field. So you'd always say, I love you, And then it became easier for you to say that. So through the music community, they taught me what that meant.
Yeah. Well, you've always been, nice guy to me, putting your arm around my shoulders and giving me a hug, and, I'm kind of the same way towards you, so it just seems so interesting that back then it was almost culturally taboo to,
Oh, yeah. You didn't show affection. If you showed affection,
it was seen as a sign of weakness. Yeah, like you weren't a man.
Yes.
Which is,
Yeah. Which, I can tell you right now, I love you. And in a manly way.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I love you any other way than you're a friend of mine and I care and I'm concerned about your well-being.
Yeah.
So, they weren't concerned about your well-being. You had jobs to do, and that's what is expected. And I'm sure my uncles went through the same experience that I did because there was no affection with us, and he had already raised his family.
Yeah.
So, good and well, we was less apt to be appreciated than his own family. So, like my grandchildren, I like them and love them almost more than I do my son and my daughter, because that's a part of them as well as them being individuals. So there's two there to love, right? You got your dad and you got your mom. And like I told him, I said, always tell your sister before you leave, regardless where you're going, that you love her. And sister, always tell your brother, because you never know.
Right.
And they do, And they'll call right up out of sky blue and they'll say, Granny, we love you. Which is awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Did you want to, were there any other mementos or past anecdotes that you wanted to talk about from when you were a kid that we missed? Or did you want to talk about when you went to California and had your edge to you.
That was an experience within itself because I'd gone in the military. And
You weren't drafted, were you?
yes,
You were drafted in what, 65, 66?
64.
64, the Vietnam draft was going on?
Yes, and they had just passed the law that, or passed the parts where that if you got a sibling in service and you're the next oldest boy at home, then you didn't have to go.
Oh, so you were exempted.
So I was exempted after 3 days being in the military. But I made my way to North Carolina and was in the military there in North Carolina and had been there 3 days. But prior to that, we were living at Granddad's still at that point, right? Because nobody had ever went back to the original home place. Where,
It just sat there vacant?
yes. I mean, it was watched after, but it was vacant. So I got the letter from Uncle Sam. We want you. Okay. Well, I was happy because I've been trying to get out of that routine that I'd been going through for years, right? And so I thought, all right, this is my good chance. And I had, Granddad was fair with me. And when Ronnie went into service, Granddad came to me and he said, okay, your older brother's going into service. So here's what I'm going to do with you. I'm going to make a deal. I'm no longer capable of milking and taking care of the farm. So every other heifer calf that is born, and he had like 16 head of jerseys. He said every other head of calf, every other calf that's born that's a heifer, I'm going to give to you. So you start your own herd. Out of 16, usually there's more bulls than there are heifers.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So anyway, this was prior to, I was probably around 16 at that time, 15, 16. So I wound up a pretty good little herd. I had 37 by the time that Uncle Sam had called me. And 37 jerseys made a lot of milk. So our milk check was pretty large at that time. For that time of that, for that era, it was large. I don't remember exactly, maybe $200 a month. So that was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I told Mom, I said, well, they've come to service, so I'm going to have to talk to Granddaddy and see what he wants to do with these cows. So I went to Granddaddy and I said, they've drafted me into service, Granddaddy, so I'm not going to be here to milk. So what do you think I need to do to my cows? Well, you need to sell the son of the bitches. Well, part of them's yours, though. Well, you can give me my part of the money. But if you're not going to be here to milk, I can't milk them. So you can either turn them dry, turn them out to pasture. We can sell them for beef or eat them for beef. Or you can sell them, take your money, and help your mother. Okay. Well, I called an old trader in that part of the country. So he came by and looked at the cows. He said, well, they're all in good shape, so I guess I can give you top dollar. So I got $17,000 for my cows, my milk machine, and everything, because I bought a new milk machine.
So you weren't after doing it by hand at that point.
Yes, I bought a surge milker on time, and they come and installed it with a compressor and all that kind of stuff, so I could milk the cows a whole lot easier and faster. So anyway, he bought them, gave me the money. I gave Granddaddy his part. Then I took the rest and gave it to Mama. I said, go over there and get the house fixed up. Move out of here. Go back home. So I loaded on the bus and headed to North Carolina.
You didn't take any other money at all?
No.
Did your mom move back to the old house?
Yes. She had already had Mr. Dyer, which was a carpenter. She already had him on the phone, I'm sure, before I ever got to the bus station. So because she was ready to get out of her dad's house. So, anyway, I get up to North Carolina. I'm there 3 days. The sergeant or whoever they are that calls roll, he comes in. He says, Don Miller. Well, there's about 5 of us, right? He said, Donald G. Miller, Kirkville, Tennessee. I said, that's me. He said, front and center. So I go up to front. He begins to chew my butt out. What the hell are you doing here? Boy, don't you know anything about the laws of this here land? And you're going to fight for this country, and you're standing right here when you need to have your ass down at your mama's house? What the hell are you doing here? I said, well, you guys call me. He said, go down to CO's. I said, where's that? The commanding officer down here, there's a big building down there that says CO on it. That's who that guy is. And you got a bus ticket back home. I thought, oh, crap. What am I going back to? I have no cattle to milk. Right? Sold all. What the hell am I going to do when I get there? Because I was headed for Vietnam, I thought, right? I'm out of Tennessee. Anyway, soon I go back home. So the bus station's about 8 miles from where Granddad's farm is. And they drop me off at midnight. So I'm going to Granddad's house. I'm thinking, oh, I don't know whether I ought to do this or not. It's 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. I knock at that door. Hell, I'm liable to get shot, you know. So, tell you what, I'll just sleep over here in the barn. So I wadded up and slept in the barn till daylight. Now I went to the house. First question is asked, not, what the hell are you doing here? You're supposed to be in the service. I said, well, I was there for 3 days. They sent me home. Why in the hell would they send you home? I said, I guess they didn't like me. He said, no, there's a reason. I said, Ronnie's in the Navy, and the way he explained to me that I was the next child in line to take care of my mother, so I needed to come back home and take care of her. Well, I never heard such a damn thing. Well, that's what they told me, so they sent me home. What, did they give you any severance pay? No, they didn't give me any severance pay. Didn't give me any clothes or anything? I said, no. They sent me home. He said, what are you going to do? I don't know. He said, well, you're not just going to hang out around here. You're going to find something to do. I said, okay. I'll start looking in the morning. So I went to work for Cookville Planing Mills, making hardwood floor, which was reference from Granddaddy, because he knew those people that operated the mill. So he said, go by and see them. Tell them that you're Homer Carr's grandson. They'll put you to work. They did. That lasted about 2 weeks. And I drifted from there to Acme Boot Company, right? And Acme Boot Company, I stayed there 6 months. Then they closed the night shift because I worked from 12 to 3, or 12 to, no, I'm sorry, worked from 3 to 12. And
that's when you got into moonshining, right?
Yes.
Gotcha.
After that.
So that was after you had been inducted.
Yes.
I see. Okay. And you were living with your mom again at that point?
No, we're still at Granddad's because our house wasn't completed. Mom was having it redone by the Dyer brothers, but it wasn't completed. So we're still working, living at Granddad's, waiting for them to get the house completed so we could move in there. So anyway, we finally get out of Granddaddy's house and get moved in to our place. And Mom calls me one day, or hollers at me. I'm out in the yard doing something. She hollers at me. She said, you need to come in and talk to your uncle. I said, what uncle? Your Uncle Howard. I said, there's 2 of them. Which one? Howard McCullough. He lived in California. So I got come in, and Uncle Howard was on the phone. He said, what are you doing, boy? I said, well, uh, I'm busy, because I didn't want to tell him I was running Shine. And he said, well, how busy are you? And I said, pretty busy. He said, well, if you ever decide that you want to come out here, he said, you got a job. And he said, I have a nursery. And you and Jerry Wayne, which is his son, you and Jerry Wayne can help us out a lot. Jerry Wayne was my age. And he said, you boys can probably wind up doing pretty good at the nursery. Because he was on up in age at that time. He's probably around 49, 50. So anyway, I said, all right. If I ever decide, I'll let you know. Well, be sure you call me. Don't take on anything else that you don't want to do. Get your butt out of Tennessee. Get out here where you got some opportunities. Okay. So when I finished running Shine, I gave him a call. He said, yeah, job's still here. Come on out. I was 21. So my first wife was on her way to California. And I'd met her in Cookville. And she said, I'm going to California and I need somebody to help me drive. She was 13 years older than I was. So I said, well, I need to go to California. So how about me? We'll just go together. And it was on Christmas Eve when we got to California. So she dropped me off. It was kind of hilarious. He told us what address, and he told us to get off on a certain exit off the interstate. Well, I was driving, so I'd go off the exit, and it made the loop. And I'd come back on, and next thing I'd be on the interstate again. I'd go off that same exit, back around, back on the same exit again. How in the hell do you get off this circle, right? But there was a side road as you got halfway around the circle that veered off to the right, which I kept missing, right? Because I never had been in California, and I'm sure my eyes was wide open like, oh man, this is awesome, right? Because I've never seen that many lights in my life. So anyway, we finally got to Uncle Howard's, and she got her hotel somewhere around there close, because I told her, I said, don't go far, because I don't know whether I'm going to like this situation or not, so I need a way out of here in case I don't like it. So I get there, my cousin's there. They used to come visit us every summer. So I'm welcomed right into the family, mama's sister, you know, and so forth. So they're glad to see me, and he's laying out what we're going to do. First of all, you're not going to go to work until you see California, and you're not going to go to work until, you know, you go see the ocean and all this kind of stuff. So then we can start the working process. So I was treated like a brand new kid, right? So I stayed up there with them for about a year and a half.
In Los Angeles again?
In Los Angeles, in L.A., yeah. And then Jerry Wayne, he got killed. They think it was on purpose. They think somebody drowned him because he'd gone surfing. And I went to the party that night. It was a pretty wild party, you know. Nothing like I'd ever seen before in my life. Of course, I wasn't exposed to California style. And they were way ahead of Tennessee people, you know. So they were sitting around the campfire and doing whatever they do, smoking whatever. And
dropping acid?
Yes, probably. I don't know. But I knew I felt awful uncomfortable. So I told my cousin, I said, I think I'm going home. Well, how are you going to get there? You came with me. And I said, I saw a bus sign right up here at the top of this beach. And I'll go up and wait on the bus. I'll catch us a way home. Well, you know the address? And I said, happen to know the address. So I'll see you at the house. So I caught a bus home. Well, Jerry Wayne, when I woke up, me and him room together in the same room. When I woke up the next morning, Jerry Wayne wasn't there. So I'd gone on to work, and about, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Uncle Howard came to me and he said, "Where'd you leave Jerry Wayne?" And I said, "I left him at the beach last night." He said, "Well, he's not home, and that's not like him. So, we're going to put out a missing persons report. And you don't know whether he was with somebody or not." And I said, "When I left, I was all sitting around the campfire." He said, "Was there a lot of partying going on?" I said, "I don't know whether there's a lot of partying going on California style or not, but Tennessee style, there's a hell of a lot of things going on that I didn't want to be a part of." I said, "I felt uncomfortable. I didn't like the situation, so I caught a bus home." He said, "What time did you get in?" I said, "About 3 o'clock, 3:30. He said, "Well, nobody's heard from him." And so he came back that afternoon about 3, and he said they found his car. It's sitting on the beach where y'all were. And you didn't see him leave with anybody. And then later on that evening, in which they having supper, police officers knocked at the door, told him that they'd found the body.
He washed up on the shore?
Mm-hmm. So they thought it was foul play. They couldn't prove it, and it never was proven. But he'd washed up on the shore.
So were you close to him, or it was just?
I was close to him. Yeah, he was like a brother to me, Because when he came back to Tennessee, I could show him around Tennessee like he could show me around California. So we were very compatible.
So when he died,
that kind of tripped my trigger, and it really tripped Uncle Howard's trigger. So the nursery began to fall apart, and we was working over in Hollywood, and the guy over in Hollywood, for some reason, I guess he thought I was a cowboy. So he asked me, he said, "You know anything about horses?" And I said, "A little bit. Plowed a few, worked a few, rode a few." He said, "You strike me as a person to be better off in the horse world than what you're doing." And I said, "Well, I've dealt pretty much with horses." So he said, "Well, look, I'm a race fan." So he said, "Have you ever been to the racetrack?" I said, "No, sir, I haven't." And he said, "Well, how about me and you going Sunday? Just give me your address and I'll pick you up and we'll go to the racetrack." I said, "Well, nothing else to do, right? So I'll go to the track with you." So we went to the racetrack, and that time we went down behind them. Apparently, he was part of that track because everybody knew him. So he said, "I'm going to take you down here and introduce you to a plater." Well, I didn't know what a plater was. Had no earthly idea. And I said, "Oh, yeah?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I want you to talk to him a few minutes." So we go down, and he introduces me to this guy, and he shakes my hand. He said, "Are you interested in plating?" I said, "What is plating?" I have no earthly idea. He said, "Plating is what I do." He said, "I work the tracks, and I'm known as a plater. I put shoes on horses." And I said, "Well, I've trimmed horses. I've never plated any." And I said, I saw them shod, but they use steel back home." He said, "These are all aluminum plates. So it's a good job. Pays well." I said, "Okay." So anyway, on the way back from the track, it kind of interested me a little bit because I'd seen people paying him, I'd never seen that much money past hands, I said, wow, this guy's doing good. So on the way back home, he said, "There's a place over in Arizona that it's called the University of Arizona." He said, "You might want to check into that." He said, "They're starting a Farrier's science course over there. So you might want to go over and check that out."
Right.
So
I think we talked about that last time. That's
so
where we dovetailed into that fella who had the fancy
Canfield?
name and
Yeah, Don Canfield.
yeah,
Yeah.
the instructor who.
Anyway, the guy from California is the one who put me onto that deal.
And at that point, you weren't back into music yet, right?
I wasn't into music, period, at that time. I didn't know anything about the music.
I mean,
I
other
wanted
than-
to be into music.
Other than plunking on the guitar as
yeah,
a kid.
well,
you-
until it got
you didn't,
burned up.
You didn't
but-
buy a guitar again
No.
until you wound up being on
Well,
the
I
road.
did buy a guitar, and it happens to be from my now sister-in-law. She worked for White's Auto in Kugel, and I was 18, back from service, and I went in there, and I saw this red and white silver tone guitar. Now, it was electric, right? So I said, Joanne, what are they asking for that guitar? And she said, you learned a hard lesson, boy. And she said, but I said, look, can I buy that on layaway, right, and pay it out, and you not tell anybody that me and you made this deal? She said, I can keep that promise. Well, at that time, her and my brother wasn't married, right? So I bought the next guitar from my sister-in-law now, and she kept it a secret. In fact, she kept it at her house after I got it paid off for a long while until I went to California, and I had it with me when I went to California.
I see.
But I still didn't know how to play it. I had it, and I could plunk on it in the car and not disturb anybody because it's electric.
It's electric, yeah.
So
Tink, tink,
Yeah.
tink, tink,
Right.
tink.
kind of like a flea on the dog, Ding, ding, ding. But yeah, and but it's still a laugh.
What about that story of when you I don't know if you want to go into this or not. If not, we can cut it out. But the moments of Don Miller's rage.
Oh, might as well, because it was California oriented,
Uh-huh.
and we'd gotten to California, and Jerry Wayne had passed, and so I was looking for an in-between thing because the college wasn't going to start over in Arizona until sometime late that fall. So I was looking for work. Uncle Howard, I couldn't stand to be around him because it was so.
Did he blame you?
No, he didn't blame me at all. But he was so depressed that it was hard for me to hang in with him, and I felt like they needed their time. Him and my aunt needed their time, and I didn't need to be in the house.
Was that their only son?
Yes, they had
Oh.
2 daughters and him. Oh.
I see.
So,
yeah.
but anyway, my wife at that time, we married out there. So we had, she had gone to work for Pepperdine College. And this lady at Pepperdine had some apartments. So she wanted me to manage the apartments, and she'd pay me a salary. Painting and stuff, and people moved out and taking care of the apartment. So I thought, well, that's a good deal until I get enough saved up to go to Arizona. So I went to work for her, and then my wife caught pneumonia, and she went in the hospital. And she's in the hospital for a couple of weeks, and I was stressed out. I didn't know a soul. My uncle was way over there next to the ocean, and I was in Whittier, so miles apart. And she said, well, just continue managing the apartments. We got a place to live anyway. So we had to put her in the hospital. She'd just gotten out of the hospital. And first thing she said when I picked her up from the hospital, she said, I'd like to go to Big Bear. And I said, you just had pneumonia. Big Bear is way up here, northern California, and it's in snow and ice and all that kind of stuff. Well, I'd like to go see Big Bear. We don't need to do it today. Yeah, I'd like to do it today. Okay. Well, she just gotten out of the hospital, so I thought, okay, we'll go to Big Bear. No big deal. So we go up to Big Bear. I head that way.
No big deal to go up to Big Bear.
Yeah, let's go to Big Bear. So I'm going up the mountain, and as I go up the mountain, the icier it gets. Well, I have no change, no way of getting traction. I'm sure those tires that I had was pure air.
Bald.
Ball. So anyway, I get up on the mountain. This car Jeep coming down the mountain. He's on my side of the road, so I slide off in the ditch. Trust me, we're cordial in Tennessee compared to those people out there. They have no remorse or there's no help in their body at all.
Was that guy out of control or just in the wrong lane?
He's in my lane coming off the mountain. I don't know, but whatever the purpose was, he is in my side, drove me off in the ditch.
And saw you go in the ditch.
Yes.
And kept going?
He kept going.
Nice fella.
Well, I've got my wife behind the wheel, right? And I'm trying to push and get us all out of this ditch. And every time that happens, another vehicle goes by and sprays me with that slush ice all over me. I'm getting madder and madder. Mainly at myself because letting her talk me into going up there, right? So finally, this guy from Arizona pulls up. He's got a winch on the front of his Jeep. And he's kind enough to stop and say, man, it looks like me you're having trouble. I said, I've got a lot of trouble. More than you probably want to know. So he said, I'll just winch you out. Well, when he winched me out, we were headed up the mountain. So there was no place to turn around. I had to go up to an overview and then turn around and come back, start back down the mountain. So on the way up to this overview, there were some kids up on the bank above the road. Slaughtered that windshield of mine with ice balls. Well, I was already irritated, so I threw the sucker in park and out I went. And they were up on the bank, probably 12 feet above my head. My wife was in the car hollering, don't, Don, get in here. But, no.
Don had already had a bad day.
I'd had a bad day. This Tennessee hillbilly was after somebody. So, up that deal I went. But they'd just been cutting brush along the side. And there was a pine bow there about the size, probably at the end of a small baseball bat. But it was solid. So just as I got up to the top of the hill, this one kid, probably 16 or 17 years old, waylaid me with a snowball. And at the same time, I'd taken this stick and I'd caught him about his knees with that stick as hard as I could punch it, right? Well, when he bent over to hold his knee, I grabbed him on the back of the neck with that stick, pulled him to me, and then he was on the ground with his back facing up the hill, right? And I had the stick under his throat. Slid down the bank. When we hit to the bottom of that bank, it broke his neck.
So you rode him like a toboggan?
Yes, right down that bank. It broke his neck. Scared me to death. But it turned out he lived. I got fined. And that's story number one. But I kept in touch with him. Make sure that he was okay. And he turned out to be fine. His dad didn't have any hard feelings because he told him. He said, you shouldn't have been throwing snowballs. So his dad scolded him just about like my granddaddy would have scolded me.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I got off lightly there. And then shortly after that, I'm in the grocery store. My wife is still sick. Right? She's still not over the
So did you make it to Big Bear or no?
No. We made it to the turnaround. But
and then you made it to Broke Neck Point.
Yeah. We wasn't interested in Big Bear after that happened. Especially my wife wasn't. Let's get you home, right? So anyway, after the report, that was 3 or 4 hours standing out in the cold reporting what happened. So anyway, a couple of weeks later, she sends me to the grocery store to get a list of groceries that we need at the house. So I'm over there at the grocery store, and this foreigner, he's run over my heels twice.
A foreigner.
A foreigner. Yeah.
Not a farmer.
No, a foreigner.
A foreigner.
Yeah, not from this country.
That's right.
So
anyway, he may have been here from where? Vietnam, perhaps.
Well, there or Japan or China or something. So anyway, I'm going down the aisle. He hits me again
On the back of the ankles.
on the back of the ankle
With the shopping
his
cart.
grocery cart.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, Hoss, these aisles are 8 feet wide, and I'm not that big. So, you're doing this on purpose, or you're just blind as a bat. One of the others, you need to be fixed."
Well, they don't know how to drive very well.
You hit me one more time with that damn cart, I'm going to see if I can't tear your head off. So, you go ahead and get ahead of me. Well, somewhere during that time, I'd eased up in front of him again. I don't know whether it's on purpose or what. But anyway, he hit me again with that cart. And I felt it that time all the way through because he had already rubbed my heel. It already hit me enough to where it was pretty sore. So there's a stack of beans or canned peas that's in the aisle. You know how they stack them in a round circle. So I loaded up my arm with those cans of peas, and I went to chunking them, chasing him down the aisle. Throwing it every time I'd get one. If I ran out, I'd just reach and get something off the shelf and throw it at him. So just as he went around the meat counter, I had pork and bean can. 1 quart pork and bean can. And I gave it all I had.
So he made it past produce.
He made it approach right in front of the meat counter.
Made it to the meat
All
counter.
all beef counter. And I chunked it. And it hit him right on the shoulder, caught him right in the top of the head, and bounced him right through the plate glass mirror over the meat counter.
Mm.
So I had another.
Did it knock him down?
Yeah, floored
Like
him.
you beaned him.
Yeah, beaned him.
You beaned him with the
Yep.
bean can.
Yeah. So I had another can in my hand, reared back, and was going to throw it at him, and this store security guard said, "I think this is enough, Hoss. He's down, he's out, so
You knocked him
I
out?
guess he's adult." Anyway, and he said, "We don't need this going on. You could hurt somebody seriously in here with what you're doing." "I intend to, sir." So I pulled my boot off and showed him where he had hit me with that cart. So in the meantime, I'm sitting in the middle of the aisle showing him my heel, and it was bleeding. So he said, "I think we need to go up to the office." So we go up to the office. I had to wind up paying for the mirror, and whatever cans was damaged along the way. But you know what? Both of us were barred from the store. They never let us come back in there, or at least never let me come back. And it was right across the street from where I live.
Oh, no.
So I had to drive 4 or 5 blocks in order to go to another store. So yeah, I had a temper.